still alive. Seen anything like that before?
Stay outside!
Olga. She escaped.
What's up, Horror Feeds? We are back. Ricky Grimes here, Horror Fiend TV. You're watching Three Corners of Horror. I'm here with JR. I'm here with Joe. What up, fellas? Tell us how you doing. JR, you first, sir?
Doing good, man. I'm pumped to talk about this movie. I've been talking a lot about this movie to you guys. So is it a movie full of depth or is it kind of shallow?
How about you, Joe? What do you say?
Listen, you can see the smile on all our faces. Yeah. We're looking forward to this one. This was a great selection. Awesome fucking movie. I mean, I loved it. So let's see what you guys have to say.
Great. Well, tonight we are going to discuss the Russian body horror film Superdeep, directed by Arseny Suen. This is his first feature film, and I apologize if I got the name wrong. This is his first film, like I mentioned. He's done shorts prior to this, but we do share a birthday, so I knew I liked this guy for a reason. Now, Joe, take us through the story of Superdeep. Give us the premise, my friend.
All right. So the premise of this film, honestly, off the bat, you're going to be dealing with something dark. When you are first, for the shots in this movie are awesome. I'm sure you guys are going to keep mentioning them. But right in the beginning, you're shown this shot of a man on a gurney. Obviously, he's dying. And you see the paddles. They're trying to shock him. You see the large needles. I'm scared of needles. So, man, at that point, I was like, oh, God. But, the man eventually dies. So then you see another scene, which was another beautifully shot, which is just Anya sitting there in the dark as she's writing. And you're hearing her words. So she's writing the events of what ended up happening. And they're working on a vaccine. Then the vaccine is basically, they don't actually disclose what happened. But they're trying to come up with this vaccine, and the scientist that she's working with ended up putting it on himself, and it didn't work. He ends up dying, and it's kind of creepy that we ended up watching a movie having to do with vaccines, kind of with everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, I thought the same
but
thing.
It took place in 1984. So then you end up seeing this man come out in the shadows, kind of lean in towards her. Again, another beautifully shot scene. I'm probably going to repeat that a lot, so I apologize. But so this man comes up on the, over her shoulder as she's kind of writing all this stuff down. She's dealing with it, and he's basically instructing that she needs to keep going on. So the Russians are trying to come up with a vaccine, and they basically skip preliminaries. They skip the animal trials. They're going straight into the human trials. And this is taking a toll on Anya. And this is she's going to keep going on, and she's going to go on with this, going against the Hippocratic Oath, which is going to come into play a little bit later on.
You were mentioning these shots, and before I get into the plot, is the fact that they were done in black and white, and then the movie was in color was just amazing. I mean, love this movie. So now the plot is Superdeep. You wonder what Superdeep is? Now Superdeep is a secret underground installation called Cola Superdeep. Now here they have the largest borehole on Earth, and they're doing some kind of research here. So there's a little foreshadowing going on. Like when eventually Anya, which we'll talk about a little bit later, she gets this phone call, and the first thing we hear about is that there's massive foreshadowing here, is that the head of the research of the facility, sorry if I messed up the name, Grigoriev, he's been denounced because he's been hiding a little bit data of some kind of unknown disease that's happening in this facility. So this sets up basically the movie.
Yeah, like I mentioned prior, this is a Russian film, so guys, forgive us if we're pronouncing things wrong.
So here's the thing about the dubbing. I didn't even realize it was dubbed. Honestly, the dubbing was so amazing that I had no idea it was dubbed.
It's good. I watched a lot. JR, probably you could attest to this too. I watched a lot of Italian horror movies that are all dubbed, And I don't know what it is. The dubbing in this film just it gave me those emotions to watching those old school zombie horror films, or not even. It could be any Italian horror film. The way the dubbing was done, I don't know. It's just something that I just noticed, and I was like, man, I don't know what it is. The contrast to the beautiful, like I said, cinematography, it worked. It was so cool, man. I just because the movie's trying to be beautiful, but then at the same time, it's reminding you, all right, no, this is a horror film, and I dug that.
Yeah.
Now going back to Anya, this character barely had any lines throughout the entire film, but she was so captivating. JR, I'm not familiar with the actress. Give us some insight into her and the character of Anya.
Well, I mean, her like her presence was amazing. I'm sorry, she took the film. I mean, she reminded me. I mean, there's going to be kind of I might get a little hate on this, but she took this film presence wise as Sigourney Weaver did in the Alien.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, you knew it was her. Now,
I don't mean to interrupt you. I would actually give it to Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs.
that too. I'm trying to keep it sci-fi though.
No. Hey, no. Silence of the Lambs was a horror movie.
Yeah. You could.
Oh, yeah, no,
So
it
I'm
was
trying to
good.
say that as far as like the acting itself, like the scenes where you don't have to speak, she delivered.
Well,
Jodie Foster won an Oscar for delivering that
Anya
role.
she was very stern and stoic in this film.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when she showed emotion, it's just
Mhm.
oh man, this lady was awesome.
Nah, I mean, one thing about her character is like, after we get the whole flashback, well, the beginning premise sequence where, this happened with her, and we go into a New Year's party where she's sitting there and she's at the point where she's celebrating. They're actually celebrating her achievement because the vaccine went through. She's a hero in Russia, not a woman that is a hero in Russia. Let's put that as a woman.
Mhm.
So while she's sitting there, she gets this phone call, and basically it's just, she is a epidemiologist. So if you don't know what epidemiologist is, it's basically they study disease and the effect it has on the population. So this is why she's called into this facility, because the minute we find out that Grigory has this hidden data on this disease, she's being called. Now, not only she's being called, you have to remember this is a woman who is hiding skeletons in her closet because she's going there with this big secret about what happened in order to get this vaccine that only her and one other person know about. So right off the bat, you have a character that's already flawed. And her presence is still amazing to this. And then, to show you what kind of character she's even more is she asks him, what's the end means of this? Like, oh, you're going to get all the credit. If you make a discovery, it's all going to go to you. So now you have her even highly motivated, weighing in the skeleton in the closet. And then basically I'll let Jill take the rest of as far as her role in the film. Because, oh God.
And listen, what you just said is basically one of the monsters in this movie, which we'll discuss later on. Literally, what you just finished saying is one of the monsters in this movie. So, as JR said, Anya, and I'm going to pronounce it in the Russian way because honestly, because it's a Russian movie, we should every once in a while just give them their little Russian names. And she is played by Melina Radulovich. And if you're watching this, I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. She is an epidemiologist. It's a big word for all of us to kind of say. What I really loved about her character, early on, actually, one of the shots that was great with her was when she was in the helicopter, and tie it in later on. But going in, you knew that you weren't dealing with someone who was, even though she was a scientist, she was going to be a little bit on the badass side. Anyway, so she's brought in there, as Junior said. There's an event that's been going on in the Superdeep. They started hearing like the screams coming in from there, and they have to try to figure it out. The screams will come in later on.
Yeah,
Hopefully, everybody. All right. So, one of my favorite parts on this is, when they get into the elevator and she's sitting there next to Peter, and he asked her that he wanted to know what difference is between a microbiologist and an epidemiologist. And she tells him that microbiologists study life forms. And he's like, and you? I study how they die. Like, for me, she was brought in there to figure out how I'm going to kill you.
So this character of Anya, yes, I love the character herself. Like I mentioned before, this is a character that doesn't smile. I think the only time she was happy was, during her little celebration during New Year's, and when she got that call, her game face came on, and then she got to work. And everything you guys said is spot on, and I love the fact that it is a foreign actress. I'm not familiar with her, and that makes it even better because I'm more invested in the story because I'm not trying to tie her character to her any previous roles or anything like that. And I think she did a really good job at that.
When you mentioned the phone call, I loved how she said,
Yes.
"How did you find me?"
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
even she just finished saving everybody, and she's having this dinner, and it gets a phone call, and we don't even know if it's her place or her friend's place because they would say it's a phone call for you, and her first words were, "How did you find me?"
All right. So with that being said, now this film here has a threat like no other. Now it may seem familiar on paper, but the way this film did it, you guys mentioned the screams, Jr. The threat of Superdeep. Whoever watched it and is not familiar with it, or they haven't seen it and they don't care about spoilers and they want to know everything, doesn't matter. Run this by us, man.
Mhm. Well, we know there's something there. We just don't know what it is. Now, the first inclination we get that there's something serious there is, which Joe mentioned, was the scene with the helicopter when Nina gets there and the man's standing outside with a grenade in his hand. This kind of reminded me a little bit of John Carpenter's The Thing.
Absolutely, 100%.
Totally.
That's what
Totally.
they're going for.
This is like, and before I keep going, let me say this. It does remind you of John Carpenter's Thing, but it did separate itself drastically and not copying everything like that.
When you brought this film to my attention, you mentioned this is John Carpenter's The Thing, but in Russia. And when I seen it, I was like, all right, I could see the similarities, but I am so happy it was not John Carpenter's The Thing in Russia. They went somewhere different, and I
totally different.
Yeah.
So one of the first characters we meet that actually enhances even the threats even more is Grigoriev. Now, he was the one I mentioned earlier who he was the head of the facility. He was the one that was denounced because he's hiding data. So when they get into the elevator and he's sitting there and he just looks at them, he's just wondering why they're there. And he continues telling them, save yourselves, just leave, just go back up the shaft, save yourself. Now, we kind of wonder what he's hiding because he basically sabotages the whole elevator so he can escape. But what we end up finding out is that there's this thing that's living deep in this borehole that was kind of awoken because it was frozen through the permafrost. Now, this thing is basically, which Joel will explain a little bit more, it really sets up the whole, like once the elevator scene happens, this whole movie goes into full motion because now you get into the crux of what is exactly inside this big borehole.
That dude was such a dick too, what he did to the elevator.
He reminded me of the guy who plays from freaking Captain America, the scientist. Oh God, what's his name?
Zoloff?
Zoloff, yes, his voice.
Yeah, well, it might as well be just a floating head.
Yeah.
See, and he reminded me a little bit of Ash from Alien. So,
oh, you scared me. I thought you meant Ash Williams.
no. He reminded me of Ash.
Yeah.
From,
no,
yeah,
I got
Alien.
you. Yeah.
But so when you mentioned the doctor, and I mentioned the Hippocratic Oath, he starts talking to Anne and all them, and he actually brings that up again because you have 3 doctors in here because you also have Peter, and the Hippocratic Oath comes into play, and he even called out Anya. I'm gonna say it, Anya. He called out Anya on the fact why she's actually there. This movie has to do with a lot of monsters because the other monsters are the humans, and when you're mentioning what Superdeep is in there. The other 2 threats are actually Major Sergei. Major Sergei, who was the guy who popped up on Anya in the beginning of the film and told her to keep going, is the one that brought her back in here. And he basically wants Russia to use whatever is down here to become a weapon. Because this took place in 1984. So this is in the middle, actually not even the middle, towards the end of the Cold War. The Cold War ended in 1989.
Yeah.
So, at this point, Russia and United States are trying to come up with weapons, and this could be the best biological weapon that Russia has against the United States. But then you also have Peter. Peter, who, when you first are introduced to him, appears to be a little bit unassuming. Later on, you find out he's not. He's in here because he wants to make a name for himself. He wants to be involved in one of the greatest discoveries. And he knows actually that they found one of those discoveries. I love when horror ties back to nature, because nature will always be the biggest horror that we have against each other. Hello, Corona.
It's as real as it gets, too.
Yeah.
It's as real as it gets. I mean, so he ends up, he has a conversation with them. And this is where, if you notice, Anya actually realizes the danger of what they're dealing with, because he explains, and I'm hopefully going to pronounce this right, but he says they're cordyceps. So what cordyceps is...
Last of Us, man. Come on, son.
All right. So is that in The Last of Us?
Yeah, that's all. All
right.
Yeah.
So he mentions The Last of Us. Me, who didn't play that game, I'm going to tell you that if you watch Our Planet or anything that involving nature, it's a fungus.
You're going to watch the HBO show, right?
Huh?
You're going to watch the HBO show? The Last of Us?
No, I didn't.
No, are you going to watch it? I'm not saying.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right, then I won't say nothing.
Because no, that you mentioned that, you're going to mention Pedro Pascal. He's going to come up a little bit later on. So, if you don't know what that is, and now that you know The Last of Us,
it's real.
If you watch any nature stuff,
it's real. Yeah.
So spores basically log on to a person or a thing, and then make that thing go back to the colony, and then infect the colony and basically destroy the colony.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what he ended up. When he mentioned that, he knew what they were dealing with, and you had the major who basically wanted a weapon for Russia, and then you had a scientist who just wanted to make a name for himself despite wiping out possibly the human race. So those are like the two other villains besides what we're about to talk about.
A lot of conflicts going on in this.
Oh yeah, man, awesome.
Definitely.
All right, so one of the things I'm going to introduce on my part is I'm going to take a shot for a really good movie, and this movie was fucking awesome. I love being introduced to a new movie. Junior, yes, you've talked about it, and as soon as I saw it the first time, I understood why. I saw it the second time, really got why, but the third time, freaking got the love of this movie. So we're getting to the final moments on this. So early in the film, Anya is attacked by Kira, who had been infected by Olga. Both the bodies have been hideously deformed by the infection. We got a little bit of explanation as to why, as it was going on. And then this monster pops up, this horribly disfigured monster, which compromises of basically the soldiers, the doctors, everyone who has been involved in all of this, which then gives you the answer as to why the Russians wanted to investigate, why they were hearing the screams coming in from below. Because right before this, you ended up seeing the wall of what looked like to be faces. Is that what you guys noticed also? Was a bunch of faces in that wall. Those were the screams that were being heard. So they Anya ended up fighting this monster. Anya, Peter, and Nikolai. And when the monster attacks Peter, Peter gets absorbed into the monster. The special effects were awesome. Honestly, I know we've talked about other movies and
a lot of practical.
This was freaking, like, honestly, it was like, I didn't even look at it as CGI. Like, the practical part, it was just awesomely done.
It was seamless, yeah.
Oh man, when you saw the screaming faces, especially that torso, it sounds stupid on paper when I'm explaining how this monster shows up, parts of it, but it was just awesomely done.
This is where I give this movie kudos once again. They could have went the cliche route and had Anya kill the monster, which she didn't. And I love the fact that she didn't. So her and Nikolai escape to the elevator. Now, mind you, Nikolai gets to the elevator first. What she does, she crawls underneath this monster, grabs a piece of it, cuts it, because, hey, she still has a job to do. So she has to make sure she has... Well, no, it No, she took a piece of
She needed the sample.
needed the sample.
Oh,
She
I
took
thought
the
that was the
sample.
card that
No,
she cut off.
Nikolai had the card. He had the thing
Yeah,
over.
she took
cut
the
off
sample with her.
She took the sample.
This is why it deserves another watch.
Then she gets into the elevator. Now, one character that we didn't talk about was Sergey. Sergey was the basically the leader of the soldiers. And from the beginning, when Sergey shows up, you know Sergey has an infatuation towards Anya, to the point where every time they had a conversation, come on, look at her. But every time they had a conversation, he would always try to guess where she was from, and she wouldn't say. So the last scene we seen him is he gets infected. And one of the coolest things I like about this movie, the infection, was how the skin will glow red as the parasite's going through. That was awesome. So
yeah, that was pretty cool.
He's infected. He's gonna hold off whatever prior to seeing this monster. So he asks her, where you from again? And then she goes, I'll tell you when I come back up. So you wondering where Sergey is. So when they get into the elevator, the door closes as they get the creature basically to pull back from the elevator. The door's closing, and you hear Anna. And here's the remnants of Sergey, basically attached to the column in the elevator. Now, when I seen first of all, this is beautifully done, the effects on Sergey, because it reminded me of H.R. Geiger's artwork. Yes. It was literally H.R. Geiger. So he goes, Anna, I know you were here. So this is where the movie once again takes a different turn, because she knows at this point she has to stop the elevator, because Sergey was supposed to be the original specimen sent back to Russia. So here's Nikolai. They get into a whole fight scene. Nikolai's trying to kill her because he doesn't want to die down there.
He wants to get the hell out of there.
He wants to get the hell out of there. So he's choking Anya. And here you have Sergey just starts yelling, and his arm comes up. You see the flesh literally just peel right off and stabs Nikolai in the neck with his bone. And you know what? This is where I think this movie once again keeps elevating itself, because you had Sergey save her. So what does she does? I'm from Yugoslavia. She finally tells him where she's from. Then she gives him a kiss, which you're like, but that
was nasty.
Yes, there was. But what I like about it, there was so much empathy in that scene.
Yeah, it was. I agree with JR.
And it was to the point where you don't get that much from horror movies now. No. And he tells her, basically crush the elevator. So she's struggling. She's trying to do everything to get the codes wrong.
Better get it wrong 3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. She passed out, and then here comes the rescue team to come pick her up. As they pick her up, she lunges the thing, presses the button one more time. They pull her out. Here comes down. But that scene, they could have ended the movie with her killing the monster, which I'm glad they didn't. But the fact that Sergey was a hero even in his last moments, and just the fact the way it looked, this was a great ending. And then let's cycle back in the beginning when we first Anya gets there's the guy with the grenade. What happens with her? She gets rescued. Here comes another investigation team, which she was told nobody's coming by the major. Here's an investigation team. She lunges, grabs this guy's grenade, and the movie ends with her holding a grenade, and the fact that you didn't see her get killed. Oh, and one more thing. The creature's still down there.
This film was more original than most people would give it credit for. I like that. So closing thoughts right now. GR, what you got to say? What do you rate this film, man?
I'm sorry, a lot of favoritism for this film. Great storyline. Great main character, Anya. Great supporting cast. I mean, this movie, honestly, I can't find a flaw. I really can't find a flaw in this movie. The cinematography, the fact that you begin in the movie in POV of Anya, the fact that there's every time she has a flashback is black and white and goes into the color when she's back to normal. I mean, there was this movie could be talked about for such a long time. I'm gonna show a lot of favoritism. I want to do 5, but I'm gonna do 4.5. I mean, for me, it deserves a 5.
4.5. What makes it not get a 5? You watched it 5 times. That's 5 points, man. Now, what knocks it down?
And I'm glad they didn't do this, but the scene where she goes down and she finally sees the thing, the basically
monster.
the parasite is all you see
Yeah.
is the flashes of red.
Show it to me.
And I'm glad they didn't really show it, but
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up.
Part of me wanted to see the whole thing because this thing was massive.
They really showed it. Yeah.
No, and the fact they just showed the red flash, that for me, I think if they would have did that just like a quick, I would have gave it a 5. But I think that's the one thing that kind of held it back.
This is gonna be my first 5.
Mm.
This is a 5 for me. I mean, cinematography,
Confetti!
storyline. You know, the actress, you know, delivered. Yes, Sigourney Weaver. You know, Jodie Foster performance. The supporting cast, because it actually took me a minute to realize that Peter was actually kind of a bad guy. You know, and even the Major, I thought he was not bad. This movie, got a 5.
Was Peter more of a bad guy or just a coward?
Peter was a bad guy. Peter was a bad guy because he was in it because he knew what the doctor figured out. When he explained to you what the fungus does, he knew what the fuck he was dealing about.
He knew. So
he wanted his name to be tied into it. Oh yeah, no. This man, it's gonna be a few that's gonna get a 5 from me.
You know how I could tell it's a good movie for me? I asked you on the chat. You know, how long is this film? You mentioned about 2 hours. When it comes to horror, I don't like long horror movies. I don't
either.
I love long movies. If it's like the Avengers, let's say, all right, give me 3 hours of the Avengers, right? Endgame, for example, or Justice League. I sat through 4 hours of Justice League, never paused it once, and I was like hooked.
But and Superdeep is the same thing.
2 hours is nothing if you think about it. For a horror movie, to me, I did not once feel like it dragged, and it was a slow burn to start. But not once was I bored or looking at my phone, or I was so into it. By the time it was over, I'm like, damn, this is.
You could use a little more.
It didn't feel like 2 hours, you know. So
you could use a little more.
Oh man, great job. I'm going to go with 4.5. All right, I didn't find no flaws with this, but for a 5, it's got to be near perfection. And for me personally, it's like I said, it was a bit of a slow burn to start. To get into it, so I'm gonna reserve my 5. I'm still gonna reserve it. But this movie, if like Joe gives it a 5, I'm not gonna debate that whatsoever. This film deserves to be seen by more people, and I wouldn't say, oh, watch it. It's the Russian version of Thing. No offense, JR.
No.
It was a bad. You're
cutting it short because
you did
this film here. I wish, and it was my fault. I should have seen it sooner. Mm-hmm. It's a good film. All right, guys, so that's going to be it for today's video. 3 Corners of Horror. Super Deep. So, JR, why don't you tell us what's going to be next coming on Horror Fiend TV?
Well, we're going to still stay in Russia. And we're going to go to this nuclear facility that kind of went bad. So we're going to do a found footage film called Ghost of Chernobyl.
Yeah, you know Jeremy Way went fishing in Chernobyl? What? That's my hero, man.
It's gonna be a good movie. Well, here's to see what you guys think.
Ghost of Chernobyl gonna be next week here on Horror Fiend TV. Make sure you come back for that. I am your boy Ricky Grimes. We got JR, we got Joe with the 5, and we're gonna say come back next week. Please like, share, subscribe. Do everything you gotta do for Horror Fiend TV. Peace, be safe. Come back. Peace. Super Deep.
I feel like there's something wrong with me, but it doesn't really hurt.